to the Sports Entrepreneur Workshop. And today we have a new guest, Neha Sahu, who is the co-founder for Just for Kicks and also the director of partnership at Enabling Leadership. So, Just for Kicks is a sports for development organization that works with children and use football as a tool to build leadership qualities and life skills in children. Hi Neha, how are you?
Hi, Kushal. Very well. I hope everything's good with you as well.
Yeah. Hey, Neha, can you tell a little bit about yourself, about your education, and how did this idea of starting Just for Kicks came to you?
Yeah, sure. So currently I am in Mumbai, stuck in the pandemic in Mumbai, and I also grew up in Mumbai, went to school over here. So lived the city life throughout. After school, I ended up studying in New York for university. I studied psychology and media. And through my schooling life, I was really disturbed by the difference in the rich and poor in the city, even as a child, right? Growing in Bombay, every signal would have extremely poor people, and then there were really tall sky rises we lived in. When I went on to New York, I realized that this problem is not only in India or in the city that I grew up in, it's a global, worldwide problem, and even countries like America have it. And I was extremely disturbed by this fact. But something that was really interesting to me is that my education while growing up in India seemed very different from what I got to try in the States, in the US, where I
Mhm.
got to choose what I wanted to do, study, and had many options. And at that time, I heard about something called Teach for India, came back to India, did the Teach for India fellowship. In this fellowship, I was a teacher in school, and that is literally where I was teaching close to 50 students in second grade in a government school in Mumbai.
Oh,
This was a municipal school. And over there, I realized that it was really difficult being a teacher and
wow.
teaching all the subjects as a class teacher. And at that point in time, luckily in 2011, Just for Kicks just happened to our lives. Um, I started using football to teach the students because I realized the area in Mumbai where I was teaching, these children were football fanatics, and I
Mhm.
loved football growing up, watched football, played football and other sports, but I didn't know that I lived in an area that had football fanatics. I thought cricket was the language of the country then.
Yeah.
So I started teaching using football, and this was done in a very ad hoc manner for an entire year. But by 2012, both me and my co-founder realized that we were onto something really big and exciting. Students were coming to school, they were doing well academically, confidence was going up, and it was a ripple effect of the number of different things and results that we were seeing, which is something known as life skills. And we've, over all these years from 2011, set it up as an organization. It's a full-fledged program now. Simply putting it, it was a passion project when we started 10 years ago. And now we are operating in 8 different sites in India, including villages and cities. And just this year, we made it to Cambodia as well.
Oh, wow, that's very interesting. Can you tell us a little more about Just for Kicks? Like, how many children are you working with, and how many coaches do you have? Can you give a more idea about it?
Right. So over the years, Just for Kicks has grown. We managed to scale it up quite a bit, and in 2018, actually, we became part of a larger organization called Enabling Leadership. But Just for Kicks is the biggest program that we have. We've
Mhm.
been reaching close to 4,500 children across Mumbai, Pune, Delhi, Bangalore, Chennai, Hyderabad, and we work in 20 villages in Karnataka. As I said, we just started a small pilot in Cambodia this year. To reach these 4,500 students, we've gone to 160 odd schools over
Oh,
all these years. These schools are, the majority of these schools are government schools, close
okay.
to 70%, and the remaining 30% are all low income private schools, which are pretty
Okay.
much the same infrastructure, learning levels as government schools. And we worked with nearly 150 plus coaches over the years
Oh, wow.
to again implement the program in schools. Yeah.
Oh, that's very interesting. So, do you have a way to measure the impact of your program?
Yeah, what we have done, Kushal, is we've through Just for Kicks, what we say is we're using football as a main tool or the vehicle to develop life skills in students. And what we say is while the school is able to build the academic knowledge and skills, every child needs the whole all-round development. So we are
Okay.
complementing the schools and developing these softer life skills. So we have an entire framework, a leadership framework that we've created that talks about what are the different life skills we are measuring. And Just for Kicks is a 6-year program for any student. So what happens is students start typically in third or fourth standard. Once we enter a school, we form teams of 10 students each, mix of boys and girls. And then they stay with us through 6 years. So they'll go from fourth all the way till ninth or third till eighth. And in every year, we are measuring the life skills set out by our framework. Just to give you an idea of it, there are just 3 big buckets of life skills that we measure. The first one is strong belief systems. The second one is a sense of awareness and responsibility. And the third one is excellent problem solving skills. So these are 3 buckets, and then they divide up into what every year looks like, what every session looks like. But in a single sentence, I love saying this about how the program works. Like in school, you go and you have maths, English, science, history, geography. We say we insert the football into your daily school life, and you just have that period.
Okay. Wow, that's nice. That's interesting. So did COVID had an effect on your program, and are you able to restart your program now? How does it work?
Yeah, so I think COVID had the biggest effect on the football program for sure. Luckily, I'm really happy, like touch wood, that we're doing sport for development because what I just spoke about, the life skill development had to go on with or without physical football. So what we did is our programs typically start when the school starts in India between June and July across all different states in the country. So what we did is we spent all our time from April, May, and June converting the physical on-ground program to a virtual program. And what we said is because teams couldn't meet and play with the coach, but we still had our coaches, we focused all the technical skills on individual development. So individual player development, whether it was a physical fitness aspect or the football technical skills. And we managed to get a football to every single child wherever they were in the programs. And then what we started doing is we converted it into a weekly format where they would still have 2 sessions, which they have typically, but the coach would give them a packet of their activities based on football skill, football knowledge, life skills. And then the coach would connect with the children in small groups, either on a phone call or a video call only if they had internet and WhatsApp and such things, and do a debrief, right? Like a team talk sort of thing about their learnings, their experiences, and a reflection. So luckily the program is going on, and like a typical school year, how we would have sessions going from July all the way till March, we are on track to make sure that children don't miss out even this year. And this has been the biggest question, in fact, for us, Kushal, that if school is not going on for the government school children, how are you all going on? And for me, I think it is that much more important that if they don't have school, they at least have this activity with football learning and life skills, which is more important.
So wow, that's interesting. But there's a thing like we have been reading about, like a lot of children we work with are underprivileged children, and a lot of them do not have that access to internet and smartphones. Do you, like the children you're working with, do you face like similar kind of problem?
Yeah. So in fact, because our children are so spread out, like you're talking about cities as big as Mumbai and Delhi, but then you're also talking about the villages that we work in. So it's been very different from area to area for us. Some students, mostly the city students, their parents have a smartphone, but the problem is when everything opened up, the parents would go with a phone. So there was no access to phone. And in the villages, they didn't even have a smartphone. So they only had SMS and phone call capacity. So just to adapt to the situation, what we did is we started sending them packages, a weekly session packet, which they were able to get on through WhatsApp if they had a smartphone. And in the villages, we went and distributed booklets for the year. And then the coach connects with them either on the phone call, plain phone call, or on a video call if they have a smartphone. So it's very catered to the need and whatever the students have. And
Oh,
if they
wow.
do have a smartphone, we've been working on providing them with data packs on a monthly basis so that they can access, let's say, a YouTube video or even the material that we are sending them using internet.
Wow, that's interesting. So, yeah, so that's a lot of information I learned about Just for Kicks. So, like now something related to about entrepreneurship. Can you tell us a few of the big challenges that you have to face in your journey of 10 years journey of entrepreneurship, and especially as a female entrepreneur, does it make a difference being a female and being a entrepreneur in India?
Sure. So I think I'll tackle this question in two ways. Let's start with the female part, right? It's so interesting that till 3 years ago, I used to sit on incubators for the selection panels, and literally 80% of the participants who would apply for funding for incubation as entrepreneurs were male. But even though there were 80% males, the final rounds would always have women, and more often than not, equal number of women to men. So that's a very interesting statistics right there about the quality of women. But it was just odd to not have women applying for such things also. Every time I attended a conference of any sort, I would more often than not be in the minority, again in the 5 to 10% women in a room. And then coming to sports, I think over the past 10 years, literally I would enter a room full of 25 men, 50 men, and be the only woman whenever it came to sports, be it with governments or with
Wow.
other entrepreneurs working in sports in India. And this has just about changed, Kushal. I think in the last 3 years, I am seeing a lot of positive change now, finally. But it was a really, I would say, the experience was so, it almost made you feel alone as a female entrepreneur in
Yeah.
sports, to the extent that I almost got used to it, that I stopped thinking that I was the only woman. I almost forgot about it at some
Yeah.
point. And all the other experiences I can talk about, but I'll pause here.
Sure. Any particular thing, like any big challenge that you had to face on your journey for entrepreneurship?
Sure. Yeah. So a lot of them. I can start off with, let's actually start with this whole piece about being a female entrepreneur, right? So what would happen very often is, I had this feeling that people weren't listening. The men in the room wouldn't listen very often. And there were a lot of biases and assumptions that people came with, whether you're talking to funders or you were talking to governments or you were talking to schools, because we work with schools, or
Yeah.
just partners and vendors. And what would not happen very often is they would not ask, they would assume, right? So, and then there would be a lot of, they would try to school me and teach me before even understanding where I'm coming from. A lot of the times this was purely because of gender, and then a lot of the times it was because of age. At that time I was much younger, but just plain assumption, and a lot of unsolicited advice would keep coming. And then they'll say nahi ho sakta, typical style. That was one of our big things. And I actually connect that to the biggest challenge we face at Just for Kicks, which has been of mindset in India, right? Because we do sport for development. So this mindset issue has been for every single stakeholder that we deal with. Talking about governments, the first priority for them was, why can't we focus on the municipal schools academics first? Sports baad mein ho jayega. Then all of a sudden the sport revolution and grassroots revolution started off. But again, they were not always, and not all governments are focused on what is the actual impact. Like you asked me, a lot of the times it's about how many children are we just reaching, to show the numbers. With schools, everyone in schools, from the principals to the teachers, were like, let's focus on academics. And our children are already playing and are mischievous, so why do they need one more thing? And what will sports do to them? They don't have to become players in life, and everybody doesn't get lucky. This would be the mindset. And parents had exactly the same mindset. In fact, sometimes parents would be more challenging than the schools, also saying, okay, our
Definitely.
students don't even, our children don't even study at home, they're always playing, so this is the last thing we want. So I think mindset change was one of the big things. Second big challenge for us was, over the 10 years when we started off initially, was funding, right? We are a non-profit, and we chose to set ourselves up as a non-profit versus setting it up as a for-profit organization in any way. And over here, we rely on CSR funding and grants.
Mhm.
So what would happen was, it was always this chicken and egg problem. Funders would say, why sports and why life skills when there are the basic needs like food, water, and shelter?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
we had to have big, long conversations explaining that. They would understand that. Then they would not want to fund a lot of human resource costs, want to fund only the material, footballs and such, but
Yeah,
then would
yeah.
not want to fund the coaches who put in the
Coaches.
effort.
Yeah.
And another problem with funding over the years has also been small things like they would want to see numbers that you scaled up,
Yeah.
but you can scale up only when the money comes in.
Yeah.
So it was always a dilemma. Yeah, these were some of the bigger challenges. Luckily, the end result of these end up becoming, Kushal, that the same people who were against us turn around. And for me, it's simply a case of the minute they see change, and change takes time, right? It takes a cycle of years, minimum 3 years, bare minimum 3 years. But the same schools, the same governments, the same funders, once they were with us for a few years, they became our spokespeople, they became our marketing team in a way. And that's
Oh,
how we
wow.
started spreading. So we never have to do, we never have to reach out to schools to implement our program. Schools would come after us and we would have to say, we don't have capacity right now, we'll add you next year, and maintain wait lists.
Wow, that's interesting. Neha, any particular reason that you chose to be a non-profit?
Yeah. So this is a very interesting question. When we started off in 2011, I think it was a very critical time in the world. Economy was down globally, and everyone was telling us, do anything but make money. And it was at that time also that since that time, poverty globally was at an all-time low. I came upon some really interesting statistics about the fact that the children in most poverty in the world were actually in Asia and in sub-Saharan Africa. Now, for me, I think for me personally, a motivator has just been change. And as I was saying earlier, I've been really disturbed about social problems around me. Um, so we realized that while we were trying to see what model to go with, we tried a for-profit model, we tried to cross-subsidize, we were losing all our focus on what is our vision, what are we trying to do, and what is the impact we're trying to bring about. So what we did is we just stopped bothering about the type of business, and we started focusing on what is our efficient process, what is our vision and mission, and what's our purpose. And that pretty much let us then just establish Just for Kicks as a non-profit organization to start off with. Keep it very clean. The minute you mix up business models, your focus gets disturbed and you're not able to do either thing properly. And for us, we were very focused on helping children who are most in need. We think sports is required for all levels of society, no matter how rich or poor you are. But we were interested in using it as this model, starting with the masses in India. And hence we thought we'll set it up as a non-profit. And over the years, I think we've been happy about the
Yeah,
results with it instead of diluting the work we do.
yeah, nice. That's interesting. So Neha, like on in your journey of entrepreneurship, like we often have to fail, like success and failure. So what is your coping mechanism for failures? How do you deal with it?
I think my coping mechanism is directly from sport, luckily.
Okay.
So people always ask me why is sport important in my life, with or without Just for Kicks. And it's really simple. Sport didn't teach me how to become great. Sport actually taught me how to cope with failures, because I was that sports person who tried my hand at most sports and I failed more often than not. But I became so strong with developing grit and perseverance. And I think those two words, literally, right? Grit for me is something that developed this sense of possibility in me. And it made me look at nothing is impossible as an entrepreneur. And as unreal as a problem would be, I think I've never ever felt the need to give up. And I know there will be a solution. Either I'll figure it out myself, or there'll be enough people that we can ask for help and go about it. And I think literally that learning from sport whether be it a football or be it a badminton that I played, has been really helpful in the entire entrepreneurial journey. And surprisingly or not surprisingly, I think everyone who's been influenced by sport in their life would say
Yeah.
that.
Yeah,
And that's a direct
definitely. I
connection.
agree. I agree. I was asked this question and I gave the same reply. Like sports actually helps me. Like even when I'm stressed about my organization, I go out and play football for half an hour. So it helps me deal with it. And it also, like when I used to play football during my college days, it helped me build resilience and of course deal with failures much better. So I
Right.
completely agree. Yeah.
Yeah.
So my next question is like, so can you tell us some of your biggest learning on your journey of entrepreneurship?
Sure, sure. There are a lot of them. I'll try to keep them crisp as
Okay.
takeaways. Uh, so I think the first learning, which is actually the last in my journey of entrepreneurship, is start with a co-founder as much as possible, because just having a thought partner and also a grit partner in a way is definitely going to help you do better work over time. So if you have an option, start with a co-founder. Um, then I think you really need to invest in your people, in your first people on the team, your first hires, and they have to be really invested in your vision. So vision shouldn't be something that you just put together as a sentence or a group of words, but it needs to be something that your first hires actually breathe and live, and actually pull you up and motivate you as the entrepreneur also in tough times. That's how invested people need to be. um, Something else that I believe in as an entrepreneur, and that's how we've grown Just for Kicks, has been the idea of scale, right? And a simple learning with that is from day one, your idea should be something that you're able to grow and scale. And if it's not ready to scale on day one, it probably isn't going to scale later on. But for everyone who's not looking at ideas that way, it's completely okay to be an entrepreneur with a boutique idea if you're very clear about it as well.
Mhm, mhm.
Um, um, Culture is something I think at Just for Kicks we hold very close to our hearts, and now at Enabling Leadership also. Um, Very often, right now in the world, you'll see a lot of articles, big companies, startups investing a lot of money, whether it's in global international retreats, food, and all the kinds of things. But culture is something that needs to be extremely simple and easy. And for us at Just for Kicks, it worked out with just having three basic things. We made sure that everyone who was on board was extremely efficient. Second, communication was as transparent and judgment free as it could be, so anyone could talk to anyone at all about anything.
Yeah.
And third, people had to take vacations. There was a compulsory vacation mandate, because that's how you would have your creative juices, your energy, and your ideas functioning. And
Yeah.
it has to be something that you don't have to read a book for, be inducted into. You have to live it every moment.
Yeah.
So that really helps while setting up a company. Some of the more tangible points to do with entrepreneurship learnings have been, you need to evolve with changing times. We've heard that way more often than not, and nothing like COVID to teach you that.
Yeah.
Everyone had to pivot to survive. But if you're already doing that, it's already one step ahead of the game. If you're already staying updated and never obsolete, people are going to be attracted to you and want to partner with you no matter what kind of company you are. And finally, I think the last couple of points that I'll make is, because we are a non-profit organization, we've maintained a frugality lens. We've always been very frugal and kept our model lean. For example, we didn't ever feel the need for office spaces because we ran programs in school. So we invested that money on the child, and we always asked ourselves this question, that what will make the child's experience better, and next what will make the coach's experience better. And that drove all our financial decisions. So we would invest money where it was needed most and keep a very lean model in that way. And connected to the frugality is actually paying people well, right? That's been a big lesson.
Yeah.
And more often than not, I hear it from so many people: you're a non-profit, how does this work? But I'm a firm believer that um, non-profits, like any other industry, and as an entrepreneur, you have to pay people well, no matter what background they are coming from for the quality they bring in. That's, I think, something really important that I feel as an entrepreneur, and that should be the case. It's better to have a smaller team of people who are really invested and you believe in, than having a larger team of underpaid people. And the last learning, Kushal, is something we realized just later in life. I wish we had learned it earlier, and I knew that earlier as an entrepreneur, but planning for succession and business continuity well in advance, right? Very often entrepreneurs get so lost and engrossed that they become the center of a lot of enterprises. While at Just for Kicks, we were always focused on the model and how it grows without us. I think it was important for us to plan about the continuity with or without us way ahead of time. So that's a big learning for all entrepreneurs who want to make sure the organization is going to flourish.
Wow, that a lot of great points, Neha. Like me, even like I have been on the journey of entrepreneurship from last 2-3 years, and I personally got to learn a lot of things, which I think will help me and a lot of other people who are going to watch this video. So I have this last 2 questions for you, and this because this video is about sports entrepreneurs, and we encourage college students to start entrepreneurship while they are at college. So do you think it's a good idea to start entrepreneurship when you are still at college?
I definitely think it's a good idea. It's a good idea to start early because you're that much risk free. You might be willing to take risks. You don't have dependencies. You can try, test, fail, and retry, or you can try and become really successful, hence make it bigger. So starting in college, yes, definitely, but it comes with a caveat, right? You need to be really aware of yourself, and your self-belief needs to be really high if you want to start off something. If you realize for yourself that you're not interested in entrepreneurship, don't force yourself because it's a trend. That's something I firmly believe in doing for everyone, especially college students. Don't feel like because somebody else is becoming an entrepreneur and it is in trend, we should do that as well.
So any last message for college students who aspire to become entrepreneurs, especially females? Any message that you want to give?
Yeah, I think for all females and even for men, first of all, for females starting off, I'd say that don't ever think you're a different gender. Just do everything like you want to do and you choose and think it's your right to do it. And a common message to everyone is, I think, just have this sense of possibility that you can overcome things, and there is enough support out there for you in the world. And dream big, dream larger than life if you want to create ideas and see them grow, and don't be afraid of them.
Oh, that's beautiful. Thank you, Neha, for your time. It was a pleasure talking to you. I personally got to learn a lot of things which I am going to apply and see that can help me to grow my own organization.